Jugaad as a concept has its place within the whole innovation ecosystem. It is one way of innovation, especially in a country or in a culture where you have a huge resource, chronic shortages. You neither have technology access, nor do you have financial capability, nor you might even have skilled people. So the only strategy left to innovate is improvisation. You learn how to improvise in the context that you are in, and it creates its own innovation. Jugaad as a word got double meaning. It's a negative word originally, if you think about it, where you just duplicate somebody else's intellectual property, clone it somehow and make it cheaper. Price drives the whole phenomenon from a market viewpoint. There is a market that nobody is serving it. And you try to create some innovation, which seems to work very well for a while. But if you analyze the data, generally, it is only about 15 to 20% of the market who buys products designed the Jugaad way. And I'll give you one example. Japanese, in many ways, innovated in the automobile what I would call a Jugaad way, but it's a more modern Jugaad way. What's Jugaad way? They came out with very low-priced, no-frills automobile, Datsun 210, which was a Nissan brand, Honda Civic, and Toyota Corolla. They had no basic things, no air conditioning, and they were laughed at actually in America. And Americans never took them seriously. If they had stayed at the Datsun 210 level, no-frill automobile, they probably would have plateaued, as many European car makers plateaued in America, including Volkswagen at one time, by the way. Most successful European car, Volkswagen, only commanded 3.5–4% market share. Renault failed, many British car makers failed way back when. What the Japanese did is very interesting. You start doing in a Jugaad way, but then you move up the value chain. So from a price-driven innovation, you now think about a value-driven innovation. And then ultimately, sort of a performance-driven innovation. So they came out from Honda Civic to Honda Accord, which is a family sedan, and ultimately a luxury car maker called Acura. And of course, Toyota did a fantastic job from Corolla to Camry and Lexus. And Lexus as a luxury car changed the paradigm for luxury cars. So Jugaad innovation is a starting point, not the destination. So I compare a Christian wedding with an Indian wedding. Christian weddings are all planned out, 18 months, 2 years out. Everybody knows what to do. Every operational detail is laid down. The priest is always on time, ahead of time. The bridegroom knows what to say, bride knows what to say, everybody has rehearsed and all this stuff. And wedding takes place, no emotions, they're all anxious. Nobody should from the audience say anybody objects to the wedding, right? All this stuff. And there's a sigh of relief, and then they have a lunch or dinner. I've attended many. And I find fascinating, not being a Christian myself. Then you go to a typical Hindu wedding. When the wedding begins, who cares? Just enjoy. When does it end? Who cares? Everybody's talking at their own table. Nobody's listening to the priest. You see, it's chaos. But there's some excitement in that chaos. What does it say? If there's some crisis, who is in charge? Nobody's charged, but everybody's in charge, right? Everybody jumps in. It's very fascinating. What it says is that in those sciences where trial and error, discovery is very important, Indian innovation will always do better. But sciences which are deductive, mathematics-based, like physics and mechanics, where you have to follow a formula, we may not do as well. We are very good at improvisation. So to me, chemistry, and that's why some of the world chemistry people are of Indian origin. In chemistry, I've never seen anybody coming out first time right. Whether it's a pharmaceutical chemistry, bulk chemistry, agricultural chemistry, it's all trial and error. And I used to always talk about chemistry is like a voodoo magic. It happens. The mechanics guys don't have major blow up of the laboratory. Laboratories are blocked by chemists only. You know, it's very interesting. Innovation itself happens by many approaches. There is this approach of eureka. Suddenly you get this bright insight, light bulb goes on, you feel good about that idea. It's like connecting the dot. There was something there, nobody's thought about it, you thought about it. That's not as uncommon, but it's not the only way one innovates. The majority of the innovations come from the frustration of a user, whether it's in the industrial setting or in the consumer setting or the services setting, where a user as a consumer just feels there is a better way. Somebody is wasting my time, wasting my money, I'm not getting what my expectations are, and begins to become entrepreneur. Because the market somehow is not able to read the signals of market unhappiness and try to manage that or innovate for that. And there are always legacy issues in a company. You know, companies, I find in my video lectures, I have done this thing, why it is so hard to innovate, is that when you have a huge incumbency curse, because you are a great innovator on a product, you are unable to innovate anything else. You know, Kodak, for example, great film-based, chemical-based, but they couldn't get into the digital world properly, you know. Anything analog, when it became digital, the analog guys all basically died almost, you know. Very few have succeeded. So, given that the best place for innovation is user dissatisfaction, frustration. Friction is the new word we use nowadays. If there is any friction in supply chain, a friction in payment system, a friction in use of the product after you purchase, friction in even carrying the product from the store to your home, just think through the life cycle of the product usage and you find lots of opportunity to innovate. I think we created this unnecessary myth that large companies cannot innovate and a startup, new entrepreneurial companies can, and therefore large companies actually should set aside a venture capital fund and motivate their employees outside the company to innovate, which Cisco Systems has done, many of the Silicon Valley companies we know. I think it's not because they cannot innovate, but what happens is not innovation. Again, in one of my videos I mentioned, you have so much of resistance to change installed capital. So you know that you should have soda packaged in a can from bottle. You know that beer needs to be packaged in a can from bottle, but the amount of capital required to change that equipment assembly point, is massive. You can't do it overnight. See, it gets harder to implement the innovation. It's not, largest inventions are always in corporations. They file more patents than anybody. But from invention to innovation, innovation to something commercially viable is where a lot of internal friction and resistance comes. There's a funnel that happens. So it can be done, and I can give you examples of large companies. Some of the best innovations have always come consistently over 100 years from Bell Laboratories in telephone. Some of the best innovations always have come in automotive from General Motors, what's called the Tech Center. Some of the best innovations have always come from Kellogg's in cereals, from where they began. If you look at the variety they offer, mind-boggling, same company, their own R&D. Procter & Gamble, starting from the toilet soap to everything else, consistent innovation. And the most innovative company, actually I was thinking about it this morning, is Gillette. I can't believe that they have this huge monopoly after 40-50 years and have consistently improved their product within the system. So it can be done. Absolutely. There are 3 different approaches if you want to do it within. One of the approaches is called skunk works. which was a phrase literally created by Lockheed Corporation in the defense area. What they did, they found that you need to set it up as a separate unit, isolated from everybody else. So you are in like a meditation zone of your own, and you are given a budget. And it has produced dramatic changes. Let's say in the aerospace industry, military, fighter planes. And they always come out with the next generation of innovation from that viewpoint. So they are not encumbered with the legacy problem. The second one is much more intriguing, which Bell Labs did, where I studied and I was an advisor. What they do is that they say, okay, here's a new challenge, and they create 2 or 3 teams. And each team independently comes out with a solution which is either driven by policymakers, if the telephone is a regulated industry, or there's something happening in technology they would like to do, or a cost reduction, whatever the reasons are, but they put 3 teams that challenge each other. And then somebody in the laboratories and the manufacturing arm called Western Electric, eventually we call it Lucent as a new name, will decide which of these 3 solutions they would commercialize it. Fantastic. And scientists love those challenges, just like we love challenges in sports, it's competing for the sake of just, getting new things out. So I think that's the second major way of innovating within the company. The third became very interesting in the late 80s, roughly, and became a model more and more, where large companies simply said, we will set aside X amount of money for R&D, new or breakthrough. And they create a separate venture company of their own. And what they decided was that this venture company, like any venture capital company, would not just invite internal employees, and some of them will actually take a leave of absence to create this innovation, where the company like Intel, Cisco Systems, every one of them nowadays, but they open up for anybody. So they create their own venture capital arm where they pick up innovations coming in. The latest one now, which is not the corporations decided, like everything else in life, I tell you, it's so wonderful to see that innovation itself is getting democratized. So today people are doing crowdsourcing to gather ideas for innovation. I mean, it's most exciting because everybody has ideas on a given problem. Why not get 10,000 people in 48 hours give you ideas and solutions, That's the fourth way that's organizing. But the first 3 have been very traditional approaches. Yes, the answer often lies whether you have a chief innovation officer or an innovation council, and I have been on innovation council for Motorola. We were all supposedly visionaries, thinking about the future, not to be encumbered by the present issues and all this stuff. Don't worry about operational aspects. Capital, just think what's possible. It's like a space age movie, imagine, fantasize, something it will be there. And when you bring a cross-functional team of people, you can create that, truly. What I find is that, and we did that at General Motors within the company the same way, but 11 people, all PhDs from different disciplines, thinking about the next generation of the automobiles, which is now becoming a reality, what we call a dual mode car. Very fascinating. But back to the point, these councils fizzle out over time. They don't get institutionalized. The biggest problem we found is the great excitement. We contribute our ideas, somebody codifies, we have one meeting, a dinner and brainstorming, but then we don't get a traction of the ideas we submitted into some action in the company. Because then all the roadblocks come. So that's clearly the issue. So my view is that if you have an innovation council, it has to be institutionalized into the corporate culture, the structure, the processes. Then you can see a steady flow of these ideas becoming inventions, becoming innovations, becoming products and services, clearly one. The second part, the Chief Innovation Officer. I worked with quite a few in many companies, including General Mills type, Pillsbury, high tech. What I found is that the only thing that makes a difference is the leadership of that organization. If that person is very holistic, he or she is not just a scientist, but understands the business reality and knows how to manage internal politics of a large organization, those, we call them laboratory directors, they become very good. But the next laboratory director often is not that good. So it's just like anything else in life, is the leadership issue. So my view is that leadership is very important in the innovation, not just technology and science. So I think it depends on the culture, and then certain types of innovations can be incubated better in certain cultural settings. I would say if it's a discovery science, we might do quite well.